an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Trickster Drift, chapters 11, 12, 13, and 14. Dolphin World, Chronicle of a Crash Foretold, Promenade Sentimentale, and My Boo. In these chapters, so much happens. We have a encounter with a ghost. As it turns out, Bathrobe is not of this world. We have a delivery of a very special Vespa. We have a car accident that Jared pretty much said was going to happen. And then we have the disappearance of Sarah, which I feel like does not bode well for anything or anyone, and I'm really kind of worried about that. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Many thanks to Robin for commissioning this episode. These chapters are just, there's so much happening here. I want to start off, and I don't remember if I specifically said this last episode, but the profound sense of relief that I feel when I realize that it seems Nana Sophia, and I say Nana continually because I think she wants to be. The sense of relief that I feel when Nana Sophia continues to be involved in Jared's life despite saying that she's not going to, continue to associate with him since he's not of her blood. That feeling cannot be overstated. I have been feeling really adrift, I guess, and that's, the title of this book is Trickster Drift, and when I thought about that title the first time I saw it, what I thought was that they were talking about, the drift that gets left behind when somebody is, flying through the air, getting caught in sort of, the backwind or something, almost like whatever the trickster's consequences are splashing back on other people. But now I'm wondering if it's not supposed to be drift-like because of the fact that Jared doesn't have any place concrete to stay. I'm hoping that he stays in his aunt's for a while longer because this is a pretty solid situation for him. However, the supernatural element being what it is and the way that the ghost talks about her house being in a specific place, it feels to me like there's something else that might push him out of here. But I digress. Nana Sophia seems to be really impressed with the fact that he doesn't want anything from her, and there is an instinct that she has to sort of protect him despite all of this because of the fact that he doesn't seem entitled at all. And last episode, we talked about how she was like, oh yeah, I could set you up to marry one of my daughters, and that way you could be part of the family, and you would get a bunch of money. And it's just such a weird suggestion. But it really signals how much she feels like he's family, despite everything that she has said. And this moment of him sending her this Vespa is really sweet, and combined with the care that she's showing regarding David, it's just the fact that Jared tears up and is genuinely moved that she gives a shit. I really enjoyed this. I need some people to be on Jared's side, and he has his aunt, and she seems like a good person in general, but good Lord, is she a mess. She is just super irresponsible in a lot of ways. It's weird how together she seems until you just push just a little bit below the surface, and then it all starts to sort of come apart. Not to say that isn't still much better than what he was experiencing living with his mother, but it's just somebody who is as stable as Sophia is. But then I say that, and there is a moment where his aunt says Nana Sophia is one dead husband away from her own America's Most Wanted special. So, I'm saying all of this about how this would be good for him and more stable. But obviously Sophia's involved in some other shit. So I may not know what I'm talking about at all. It's just the impression that she gives, When she texts him because she's on these amazing cruises and shows him a picture of his gorgeous bedroom looking out on the beach, decorated in the exact colors that he would want. It's hard to not feel like there goes a woman who has her life together, And I want her to break her own rules even more. He can't go and live with her. I guess, I'm not exactly even sure at this point what town it is that she's supposed to live in. But if she were to offer him a place to stay, I'm guessing he wouldn't be able to continue going to school. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because her appearance last episode, or last chapters, but I'm going to keep saying last episode because of that being how I talk about it. Her appearance and offer to, find a way to get him into the family, and her mention of the restraining order. I wondered if that was going to be the last we ever saw of her. And I think maybe my instinct was to talk about how glad I was that she was back, but then I realized that maybe she wasn't really. And now that we get this, I'm more confident. I don't want to say that she's back, she's not obviously ever going to be, I don't think, the presence that she used to be in his life. But I do think that she is the safety net. I think she's somebody that if shit really does start to really go wrong, I don't think she's going to be able to help herself. I think she's going to need to assist Jared however she can, because she just cares about this kid, and blood isn't all that matters, even though part of her wants it to be that simple. So what I'm saying is I'm being hopeful about Nana Sophia, and maybe I'm being an idiot, and Jared even thinks to himself, I can't believe that I'm bursting into tears and growing so attached just because somebody gave a shit. But honestly, that is not a personality flaw. That is a completely understandable human reaction to somebody treating you like a fucking person who needs help sometimes and not expecting you to just go off and figure it out. So anyway, I started off in the middle, and I'm going to back up again. So there's this weird start to chapter 11, Dolphin World. Humans evolved as prey and have the sleep patterns of nervous mammals, a measly 7 to 8 hours of unconsciousness that cycles from light to deep sleep, half alert and ready to run. Top predators can sleep 15 to 16 hours a day, secure in the knowledge that nothing is hunting them. They are the scary thing in the night. Dolphins never sleep, and yet they're always asleep. The two hemispheres of their brains have evolved so when one side is asleep, the other side is awake. The hemispheres switch back and forth, letting one rest while the other is active. Guys, I did not know this. That's banana pants. In the grand multiverse, there is a world where dolphins evolved into land-dwelling, upright, bipedal beings. Their cities are dimly lit. Because their buildings are designed to be acoustically pleasing rather than eye candy, their skyscrapers are fluted and curved, shot through with holes and tunnels to catch the wind, the sounds of traffic and the crowds, turning everything into song. Dolphins never truly sleep, so their cities never rest, an unending overture, a polyphony or polyphony that shifts in and out of 100,000 melodies. Now, if that's not the raddest thing, I don't understand how you can drop an idea like that in this tiny little opening paragraph and then just walk away from it. I need Dolphin City to just be, please, something that gets made into a fucking cartoon something, because that's just a really awesome concept. And I just, like I said, don't just drop that and walk away from it. So, Chronicles of a Crash Foretold. Something banged the garbage bag covered window like a bird had flown into it. It banged 4 or 5 more times and paused before another flurry of bangs, then went quiet. As Jared raised his head, he caught movement out of the corner of his eye, something black and long creeping along the floor. He pulled his feet under the quilt. He felt like he was floating above the city and thought he was dreaming, but then remembered that Edgar had painted the bedroom floor. Morning light leaked through tiny holes in the garbage bag. The room was empty. His room, if he wanted it. Okay. Listen. What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that, though, guys? Seriously. Something's banging against the garbage bag across the window. The window, I am assuming, is closed, unless that window got busted out, but I don't think it has. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then he talks about how there's holes in it. I don't remember it being described as having holes before. And there's something long and thin and dark creeping along the floor. I don't think so. No, absolutely not. What the fuck? And Jared's just like, oh God, I was dreaming. I'm like, dude, I understand that you woke up and you thought you were dreaming and then you realized that there was a painting on the floor, but there was something else happening before that moment of thinking that you were floating, and I'm going to need you to address that shit and figure out what the fuck, because you have had so much weird shit happen to you that I cannot, with how casual you are about this whole thing, it makes me deeply uncomfortable throughout the rest of these chapters, thinking that something is crawling around in his room. I don't know if it's still there. It might have left. It might have just come down for like a second and then left again. But I don't know, because he doesn't actually address it or look for it. And I'm not excited to see what the fuck this is doing. Or why is it here? And the fact that, we'll get to the whole thing with the guy who painted these in the first place, but I do not like the nexus thing that's going on with this house. I don't like it unless we get some sort of evidence that Jared is learning to deal with whatever magic he has. Because I feel like this just leaves him really open and vulnerable. But anyway, that's the opening of this chapter, and then it just moves on, and I'm like, I can't with the fact that you just are going to forget about that. So he's laying there thinking about the fact that he might be being disloyal to his mother by staying with his aunt, even though the whole thing was his mom's idea. And I just feel so sad that this is the kind of thing that Jared gets hung up on. It makes total sense. There's no way, after the way that he's been raised and the way that his mom flipped out about him giving his dad money and then about being in contact with her mother, those things, of course, are going to lead to him being really paranoid about whether what he's doing is right or not, and whether or not she's going to completely flip out on him, which leads to him later telling her about being in contact with Nana Sophia. And she has a different reaction than what he expected, because he thinks that she's just going to be pissy with him in the petty way that she has been in the past. But it seems more like she's just afraid for him. And that is a more alarming response than anything coming from his mother. So couch surfing with mom's sister. And he's telling Granny Nita. Oh no, Sophia. Are you still at the hostel? Couch surfing with mom's sister. If you really want to rebel, tell her you're vegan and ask her to sign your petition for stricter gun laws. Please send me your address. I had my lawyers dig up an old copy of your restraining order just in case. He sat on the edge of the bed and the screen blurred as he fought crying. The relief, the sudden release of tension he hadn't known he'd been carrying. Jared? Having a moment. Sorry. Don't be. Thank you, Sophia. Address, please. The courier awaits. So, Jared went into the kitchen and rummaged around for something to eat. He picked up a mango. You could seriously rub people the wrong way if you helped yourself to their food, even if they'd invited you into their home, even if they had a full pantry and fridge, or in Mave's case, even if you were auditioning for a hoarding show. He put the mango back. He rinsed out a cup and ran the tap. Bathrobe, where is it? Bathrobe was gone. Was he a roommate? Was he an overly friendly neighbor? Maeve didn't seem to be talking to him, yet she hadn't kicked him out either. Jared dug through the couch for the remote and watched the news for a few minutes. But people could be weird about their TVs, too. He shut it off. He went back to his room, dug around his backpack, and pulled out the bag of crumbling, stale nachos. Breakfast of champions, he thought. So then he wakes up again. And it turns out that he fell asleep and slept all day. Now, two things. First of all, I want to address how conscious he is of being a guest in this person's house. This is a really tricky thing for me to talk about because I don't know if what Jared is thinking and doing would be considered normal by most people's standards. But to me, what he's doing and how he's treating everything is good manners. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to interpret this as him being overly cautious because obviously she invited him to stay with him and it should be implied that he's allowed to eat food and use the television. But I can't help but I've talked before about how much I relate to Jared in certain aspects, and this hesitation that he has to behave as if he feels any sort of ownership or entitlement to anything in this house, this is deeply relatable to me. I do not like putting myself forward in this respect. Even when I am pretty much positive the person wouldn't be upset by it, it is still really, really difficult for me to take advantage of somebody's hospitality. And when I say take advantage, I don't mean in the negative sense. I don't mean take advantage like, you're pushing their boundaries or anything like that. I mean the very base meaning of take advantage, which is to say they're offering you something and it would be helpful to you. So you should accept. And this scene with him wandering around and then finally going back to his own room and eating whatever he has in his bag instead of eating what's in the fucking fridge. This is so something that I have done. Never mind would do. Have done. Because I want to make myself as little trouble for whomever I'm dealing with as possible. And the reason that I started off saying that this is tricky to talk about is because I am reading this and there's a tone to it that makes me feel like the author is really trying to point out that this is not normal. And that he is so overly afraid of being a burden that he is acting almost irrationally. And I have been going to therapy for the past year, and it has come to my attention that the worry of being a burden to people is something that I have lived with my entire life and am still not over. I did not go through the kind of shit Jared has gone through in this book, not even remotely. And yet I still have this feeling that I am bothering people by asking them to do anything to help. And it is kind of surreal to read about a character who is behaving in a way that to you seems reasonable and polite, and realize that what you're reading is supposed to be a bit of an indictment over how damaged that person is. Ouch. Like, and I'm not criticizing this author at all. I think that she has gotten to the heart of something that is really hard to see. And this is something that my co-host for Dresden Files and Harry Potter, Rashawn, has had a lot of the same experiences as me, even more extreme, growing up. And she has the same attitude about a lot of things. And it's hard to understand when you are somebody with this sort of mindset, with the sort of mindset of not wanting to be a bother, of always wanting to earn the place that you have, which he does later by like taking out garbage and like giving her the Vespa essentially because he feels like he owes her. It's hard when you have this kind of mindset to fathom how ordinary people walk around just being like taking and accepting help and expecting help. It feels so rude when you are not somebody who is like that. And yet to them, you seem borderline neurotic at your refusal to accept help. So, this was really like the whole way that this goes and the way that he like doesn't want to accept the phone that she's giving him. And you can tell when she offers him the phone, it really is no strings. She's just like, well, it's going to go to waste. Why do I want to throw it out? I'm not going to try and sell it because I'm not going to get anything. Like, just take it. For her, giving this to him is nothing. And when she does that, that is how I am when I give stuff away. People are like, oh my God, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, just take it. It's fine. Like, I don't need it. I wouldn't offer it if I wanted it. It's fine. But when I'm on the receiving end of that, I cannot fucking comprehend. I mean, very, very recently, guys, there was a fundraiser created on my behalf to buy me a new computer because mine had started to shit the bed. And you all don't know how hard it was for me to like accept that help. It was wonderful, and I'm so glad I did. And I don't have like regrets around it. But the feeling of like, I don't deserve this. People are giving me money for what? This isn't worth it to them. Why are they throwing it away on me? It sounds like I'm being falsely humble, and it's not. I genuinely feel that way. I just do. And I always have. And I wish I knew just where that came from, because I feel like it holds me back a lot. I feel like assuming that certain things are for me would be a great way to be able to advance in life, because I think there are some people who take risks and put themselves forward and in ways that will actually lead to success for them because they are simply being bold. And I don't have that confidence. So anyway, I went off topic here, but like this whole thing with Jared, it goes on, and I don't think that this is going to get broken ever. You may be able to start passing over certain patterns and habits. You may begin to start breaking free of things like this, but I think this is like a lifetime work of unlearning. And I don't expect Jared to move past this in the next 10 years of his life, if ever. But anyway, so there's that. And then there's the let's see. Oh, yeah. The fact that he is napping all the time. He keeps talking, like, when his aunt brings it up later, and it's just like, you've been sleeping a lot. He thinks to himself about, like, trying to explain to her how crazy the last few weeks have been. And sure, they have, but I can't help but think there's something else at work here. I almost wonder if there isn't, because of this, like, nexus of power that her house is apparently sitting on, maybe that's draining him or something? Like, I don't know, but there's something about how often he's sleeping that does not feel like him just recovering from a tough time. It feels like a supernatural kind of tired. And I just am concerned about him. But we'll find out. So he's talking to Sarah, and he's thinking about the fact that they had broken up, and now here they are texting all the time. And he's just really like, I thought we were done, and that most people, when they break up, just stop talking. Which is kind of adorable. It just shows how, like, totally inexperienced he is. Because it depends on the person. I am personally not friends with any exes. I am not interested in being, like, they're exes for a reason. And the one exception that I would make is I would be willing to continue to be friends with Brendan. He is not willing, and that's completely understandable. But if he were, I would be fine with that. All the other exes in my life can get bent. I'm not interested. And yet, there are people out there who manage to maintain friendships with exes, and I think it's genuinely just a friendship. A lot of people, like, sort of snarkily theorize that if you're friends with an ex, that you're not really exes, that there's still something between the two of you. And I'm sure that's true sometimes, but I do think people can completely move past it. And the fact that Jared's just completely bewildered at the idea that they would continue to communicate after they stopped dating is sort of sweet. But he wants to make sure that he's not, like, leading her on. And so he straight up says to her, I don't think that we should get back together. To which she replies, fucking duh. Like, yeah, no, we shouldn't. I'm not asking you to. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, then why are we texting all the time? And she's just like, first of all, I'm at this, like, camp for self-harm, so forgive me for wanting to just have somebody to talk to. Plus, I thought that you were being stalked, and I was worried. And he tries to, like, to deflect and be like, oh, how is things going there? Blah, blah, blah. And finally, it ends with, let's see. She wanted to adopt me when I was a baby, blah, blah, blah. Anywhere else you can go? No, classes start Tuesday. Loan hasn't come in yet. Blew my wad on tuition and hostel. Can't afford to start anything with her, but damn. Two sides to every story. Confront her, clear the air. I have friends you can stay with if it goes tits up. For reals, gotta go for supper. We must all eat together like good little robots. TTFN. I have to say, the way that this text speak is written here, it rings false to me. There's a lot of using letters instead of actually typing out things. And I feel like that was a lot more prevalent in, like, the year 2000, 2002, when typing on a regular phone with, like, a regular keypad was so tedious that you would just use letters instead. But nowadays, it's much less common. However, this is supposed to be in, like, 2014. Because the 6 is going to be coming out. They're talking about the iPhone. I appreciate, I have to say, how many, like, really, really purposeful touchstones there are in this book regarding when in history it is. So specifically mentioning that the iPhone 6 is going to be coming out shortly gives me a really good understanding, because I have an iPhone 6 that I got the year that I got divorced, which was 2014. So I remember exactly when that was. And the way that this is written out feels like a grown-up who thinks that they know what texting is like between teens, and it doesn't feel quite true to me. But it's not a big deal. So he's been trying to like reformat his computer a little bit, but it's still really, really slow. And he's also thinking about the fact that like he needs to get textbooks for school, and he had intended to get an advance on his pay from Death Threat, but it turns out that's not working out, so he doesn't know how he's going to be able to afford them. Maybe they had textbooks in the library. Maybe he could sweet-talk someone in class into letting him photocopy the first couple of chapters and assignments. One day at a time, he reminded himself. Lately, it had felt like one crisis at a time. So, he finally leaves his room, and there are these two people out there with Mave. There is a woman who goes by the name Justice Moody, and there's a mention of an Adam's apple, so I guess she's trans, and she is really, really close with Mave. And then there's somebody named Hank, who's like super buff, and Hank is kind of, as Justice calls him, a pit bull, and is clearly like worried about the fact that David is stalking Jared and is kind of getting up in his face about like what's going on with them. Does David have military training, any weaponry? And Jared tries to be like, it's not your problem. And he's like, if it affects Mave, yes, it is. And Jared's like, it's not going to affect Mave. I'm not staying here for very long. And as soon as Mave comes back in the room, Hank just blurts that out. He says he's leaving. And I really like the way that Mave reacted. She doesn't go, oh my God, you're leaving. You can't leave. You need to stay. The whole point was for you to live here. Blah, blah, blah. She doesn't do any of that. Instead, it's, you know what? If you need to leave, then I appreciate that that's what you feel you need to do. But you also should know you are welcome back here anytime. Please keep the key. I will keep the room open for you. And you are welcome back anytime you want. No questions asked. And I love that is her reaction. It feels like it's so sensitive to the kind of kid that Jared is. And I just appreciated that deeply. So here we go. We go to chapter 13, Promenade Sentimentale. And she's trying to wake him up. And she's having a really hard time. Now, I know that Jared probably, like any teenager, likes to stay sleeping longer than, most of us as adults could bear to sleep. I think about now, I used to sleep. I would go to bed at midnight and sleep till like 2 PM easy. I can't do that now. I can't. It's not even like I want to and I can't. It's straight up like that does not sound good to me anymore. But that's how I was. Now, and that's certainly probably part of who he really is. But I feel like we have never really gotten a ton of Jared being forced awake and being like lazy and groggy. So that's another thing that caught my attention here, is that she really has to like bribe him to get up. She stopped face to face with one of the painted heads. Ugh, I don't know how you can sleep in here. Aren't you creeped out? Which to me is like, why don't you just get him some paint and we can just paint over these? Why don't you just do that? But she decides that she's going to force him out of bed by plucking his eyebrow, which I just think is genius. And I may use that on Owen one day. He will hate me forever, but I still might. And this is when she offers him the iPhone. And then she says something about getting some new clothes for him at breakfast. And he's like, I really am not comfortable. Like, I just can't. And she's, again, tries to give him some space and respect his boundaries on this. And it's like, okay, if this isn't what you want, that's fine. But if you need anything, I really, please let me know. And it's pretty clear from his face that he's thought of something. And she's like, what is it? And when he says textbooks, he says, I can pay you back when my loan comes in. You don't have to pay me back, she said. I do. he said. Her smile faltered and her expression crumpled. She sipped her coffee, holding the mug in front of her face as her eyes watered. Never mind, Jared said. I'll call a cab, she said, forcing a smile. Let's go get you some books. So yeah, he tries to say like something about like a makeover. She says that she's just trying to make amends. And so this moment of him like wanting to pay her back bums her out, clearly, because she's trying so hard, she thinks, to make up for some real damage that she did. And it seems like he is not interested in the amends. And it's like, I don't feel like she really quite understands that he doesn't have any frame of reference for this. So the amends that she's trying to make don't mean anything to him. But I wish that, and she understands better than a lot of people, I think, would, because of the way that she's respecting his boundaries and pulling back. But I just don't think she quite understands how unworthy Jared feels of all of this. So they go to the university bookstore and get the books. And then she is like, well, maybe let's find a professor that you are going to be studying with and like meet them. In the biology department, a tall guy wearing a fluorescent green windbreaker was chatting with the department secretary when they walked in. He sat on the edge of her desk, gangly legs in black biker shorts. His brown hair was sweat-curled around his forehead. The secretary chewed the end of her pen, and her eyes traveled up and down Cycle Guy's body when he turned to see who had come in. So, apparently, in pretty decent shape, and just kind of appealing. And Mave walks in and completely steals his attention away from the secretary. And it turns out that he has written a book she has written a book that he cited in his, like, thesis and knows exactly who she is and is a massive fan. And it's, like, this huge deal for him to meet her. And he's embarrassed about how, like, sweaty and gross he looks. He asked her out to dinner, and then he sort of backs off and is like, well, maybe just coffee. And she's like, no, dinner would be fine. And Cecily, who is the secretary, from Cecily's murderous expression, if she could have blown up brains with the power of thought, Mave would have been headless. So yeah, poor Mave, she because he was, as described, Cecily, he was sitting on Cecily's desk, chatting with her when Mave walked in. So clearly Cecily had made some inroads with just being social with him. And then this bitch comes in and just ruins her whole shit. Like, blows it up. Yeah, Cecily, that's a rough deal. I'm sorry. And it's not even like just that, oh, well, she's prettier than me or something that's like, you can be like, oh, I can't believe that, but one day he'll see that I'm cooler. It's like, this is a woman whose intellect he really admires and whose work he respects. And that's a whole other kettle of fish. They stayed in the office where Mave and Struan gabbed about his thesis forever, while Cecily typed furiously on her computer and Jared flipped through his textbooks. Another day shot and he was no closer to finding a new place to park. When they entered the apartment, Jared heard the TV going and thought it was going to be the annoying bathrobe man, but Hank sat in the recliner, frowning at his phone. So, this whole thing is basically like the organization of them living together. She wants him to come out and like have dinner. He's interested in staying in his room and having a little space to himself. And he makes that clear and she seems to leave him alone. But then they get the call that there's something that's being delivered. And he thinks that it's the restraining order that's been sent, maybe like certified mail or something. But it turns out that it is a Vespa in powder blue with a matching helmet, which sounds amazing. A little memento. Yours, Sophia. He remembered all the toodles he and Sophia had taken, the engine whining up and down the hills of Prince Rupert. He supposed he could use it to get to school, but his mom would have conniptions if she found out city living had turned her son into scooter trash. For a dedicated Harley-Davidson fan like her, that would be like bringing a tofurkey to the Rod and Gun Club potluck. Selling it might get him a few bucks, but Sophia didn't make sentimental gestures often. He noticed the wonder in Maeve's eyes, her longing. She was keeping a roof over his head, and had just bought him textbooks and offered him her old iPhone. So, okay, so many things happening in that paragraph, but the main one is, here's a very practical solution to him thinking about how it's a long walk to school at 7 kilometers. So we've got almost 4 miles, right? How many 7? I'm going to look this up real quick. And he is given this perfect solution, but just the fact, 4.3 miles. But just the fact that his mother wouldn't approve is enough to make him be like, no, definitely not happening. She's not here, Jared. And you don't need to tell her anything. And you don't need to see anything. She won't see it. What the fuck are you worried about? Who cares what your mom thinks? But he can't, get past it. She's his whole, I hate it so much. And then the, feeling of owing her, and so he gives her the keys, which, I understand, and that's sweet, but, oh my God. I just got so frustrated about this, and it probably doesn't help that I just want a Vespa real bad personally, and I don't want this. I don't want this at all. I don't, keep it. Do something smart with it. What are you even talking about? So, this scene just, bummed me out in a lot of ways, because it's this lovely gesture that his grandmother is trying to make, and it really feels sweet and perfect timing. And then for him to just kind of throw it all in the air and be like, I don't know, whatever. I'm just like, Jared, oh my God. So chapter 14, My Boo. Mave comes up with an excuse basically to need to ride the Vespa, to which Jared is like, you really don't need to do that. You can ride it whenever you want. It's totally fine. And she says that she wants to get him a new SIM card for his phone. And she's going to go out and do this. And then when she comes back, they'll go out together and get his new SIM card. So she goes out and he's eating and hanging around in the house alone. And all of a sudden the TV just turns on by itself. And he's looking around trying to be like, maybe it's just somebody with the same remote as her that lives next door and they're trying to change their channels. And it's just, hitting her TV. And finally, Bathrobe emerges from the wall and plops on the recliner. Finally, I thought she'd never leave, Bathrobe said. Crap, Jared thought. He's a ghost. The Doctor Who marathon starts soon, Bathrobe said. Feel free to make yourself scarce. You finally realized I'm not fully in your dimension. I suppose I could wear a name tag. Hi, I'm dead. Your slack-jawed silence is even more annoying than your self-involved blather. I have nothing against the dead, Jared said, but if you don't leave this apartment, I'm going to cleanse it. That isn't fair, Bathrobe said. I was here first. Go haunt someone else. I'm not haunting you. Sweet TARDIS, the hubris of you. He said sweet TARDIS as a swear. You guys, I can't. I just want to watch Doctor Who. Go watch your lame show somewhere else. The ghost flickered furiously. The lamp by the recliner flared to life, and the bulb popped. All the lights in the apartment sputtered. Jared hunted through Maeve's mess of things for sweetgrass, sage, tobacco, anything. One of her books flew through the air and smacked into the wall. Jared stomped into the kitchen. He found a tiny bottle of dried sage in the spice rack. He got his aunt's ceramic diffuser from the top of the fridge and mixed the herb with some cooking oil, then lit a tea candle and placed it in the diffuser. The resulting aroma reminded Jared of all the Thanksgiving turkeys his mother had resentfully plunked in the oven, declaring the bird would be done when she said it was done, so don't fucking bug her about it during the football game. Oh my goodness. And the ghost calls it ghetto smudge, and I just cackled. Like, honestly, this is pretty janky. It really is, dude. Jared went up to the bathrobe and stuck his hand through Bathrobe's face, wiggling his fingers. They tingled from the cold. "Stop that," Bathrobe said. "Stop it." Bathrobe stepped back. Jared followed, willing him to disappear. Bathrobe sighed heavily and started to float. Jared got a broom. He started whacking Bathrobe like he was an otherworldly piñata. "Fine," Bathrobe said. "I'm leaving. But if you want to avoid the supernatural, you need to leave this apartment. It's an interdimensional next. Get out! I warned you." And with that, he popped out of existence. Yo. Nexus. What? What is that? I don't like the sound of this. I don't like it. Yeah. So they go and get his new SIM card, yada, yada, yada. He sends everybody the new info about where to find him. And he finally texts his mother that he's been talking to Sophia again and doesn't get a response from her. Even though they've been texting back and forth all morning, it suddenly sort of stops and drops off. And Jared finally asks Mave if it would be cool if he cleansed the apartment. And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine. Are you feeling okay?" And he says, "I just need some grounding." She brought him an abalone shell the size of a small turtle and a fan made of so many eagle feathers it looked like a wing. The handle was beaded with a thunderbird. Jared happily walked through the apartment, burning sage until the smoke detector in the hallway went off. "There's smudging and then there's fumigating," Mave shouted. And finally, we have a moment, and I've been waiting for this. For a moment, one of the painted figures, a little chief, seemed to be moving, but surely it was just the smoke and a trick of his eyes. "Shirley? Jared? Shirley? Is that the word you want to use? Because you've got all kinds of shit wandering around, and there is absolutely no reason for you to not think that that just happened. You, sir, need to stop with the denial and face the facts. Just saying." So, Edgar, he said there was something living in the walls and it would come out at night and attack him. Painting the walls was supposed to keep it out of the apartment. If he comes around, go get Hank. He lives next door in apartment 201. He's very confused and a little sad. He's back in his mother's house. He's talented, isn't he? I feel bad. I know these are the Tanis stories, but I find these murals so creepy. Remind me to pick up some primer. Tanis? The winter dances, about the man-eater at the north end of the world and his 4 man-eating birds that guard the 4 corners of the world. The one you're staring at is Hawk Hawk, the Skull Splitter. Have you heard the songs? I have a CD Barbie's dance group made. When he'd seen the creature that lived under Sophia's skin, it had made that sound. Hawk, hawk. Ooh, shit. Is Sophia the Skull Splitter? I am here for her being the Skull Splitter. Look, I'm just saying. What a fucking title. Jared swept his room and wiped down his desk. He turned his laptop on and then went to get a bowl of mangoes. We can paint over these, too, Mave said. I don't mind them. Not that I was snooping, Mave said, but I have a lot of laptops in my room. None of them are the latest models, but any of them would be more recent than the one you have. I collect other people's cast-offs and bring them with me when I do workshops in the more remote reserves. The kids like to bang around on them. There's a silver MacBook Air sitting there. And he grabs it and looks at her like, "Are you fucking serious?" And she's like, "Yeah, I was going to use that one, but it doesn't have that much memory, and I just couldn't deal with it, so if you want it, that's fine." And I just, like, this moment, I have been Jared here with somebody, like, just giving away shit to me that is impossible for me to understand how somebody has enough to give away, never mind the fact that they don't care that they're giving it away. Like, the kind of thing where if I had multiples, I would absolutely try and sell them. There's no way I'm just giving them away. His reaction here is just so understandable. So he gets on her Wi-Fi and he realizes that it's super slow. And when he checks how many devices are linked to it, there's like 20 different, where is it? 23 devices. And she's like, what? And he says, yeah, people are all like mooching off of you. So listen, here's my theory, and I might sound crazy, but hear me out. I think Jared is like the Wi-Fi, and him being in this nexus, everybody's mooching off of him like he's a router or something, and that's why he's so tired and slowed down. What do you think? Symbolism. Is it real? I don't know, but I like it. So this is the moment where he begins to prove his worth to her and kicks everybody off of it. And the speed of the internet, like, just jumps crazy. And he says something about how his mother, when people used to mooch off of hers, she would, like, go out with a shotgun to use their tires for target practice. And his aunt is like, yeah, that sounds like her. She got a slingshot for, like, her 6th birthday. And our dad was a pretty mean drunk, and she almost took his eye out with it. And he couldn't even be mad at her because she was his favorite. And Jared says she never talks about him. She wouldn't. She looked so sad. So Jared let it drop. So finally, later on, there's the, like, her doing her thing in the living room, him in the kitchen, getting a text from his mother about the fact that everything is just, like, first that Sophia is dangerous, but also the fact that, like, getting this restraining order renewed possibly against David isn't exactly going to be easy, because even if there is one, David's just always going to be popping up in his life when he doesn't want him there. And he takes out the garbage, and Mave asks him, how are you still single? So we have this moment where Sarah's mother pops by to talk to Jared. And he does, like, the last interaction that they have, and her name is Meredith, it turns out. The last interaction that they had, he pretty much threw it in her face that she dumped her daughter to take care of Meredith's parents, and then was all surprised that her daughter cracked under the pressure. Jared was completely correct when he said this. He was 100% in the right. There's nothing he said was out of line, honestly, at all to me. And by out of line, I mean, like, she was over here accusing him of being the reason that her daughter tried to commit suicide. You don't say that kind of shit to a person unless they are somebody who's a genuinely toxic human being that you've gotten to know personally is that way. She didn't know Jared, and that is some shit to try and say that to somebody. So him basically swinging back at her and being like, how about you being a garbage parent who abandoned your kid to do the job you're supposed to do? I really don't have any problem with it. However, he sort of says to her, I think I owe you an apology. Because what I said to you about what was going on, it wasn't about you. It was me saying shit to you that I wanted to say to my mom. We weren't in a place where we could be honest with each other. A lot of that was about us. And she says, I appreciate that. That's very generous of you. That's one way to say it. I mean, when she says that's very generous of you, I think that's a really good way to put it, because that's exactly what it is. He is partially right. I think he is, I think he did say that because he wanted to say it to his mother, but also he was right. So the fact that he's willing to apologize completely, even though I think we both know that he was right, generous is the exact word. And the reason that she's here, it turns out, is that Sarah bailed right after, she got out of her Camp Cutter, as he puts it. She was at a protest and she threw herself between a police officer and a man she didn't even know. She has a record now, assaulting a police officer. It's a juvie record, Jared said. She'll be fine. I thought Dad could handle her. He was always so tough. I thought that's what she needed. I didn't know. I didn't. Mr. and Mrs. Jacks don't like to ask for help, Jared said. They're proud. She looked at the floor. Mother explained how much they relied on you towards the end. They helped me too, Jared said. It's okay. We're good. Something in the bedroom thumped. Mave and Justice burst out laughing again, and they could hear them happily blaming each other. You did that. No, you. Bitch, listen, there's something in the fucking bedroom. Can we deal with this situation, please? Because I get very comfortable with it. I don't like it. I don't like him sleeping in there. I don't like him getting all of his energy sucked out by whatever the fuck is walking around. I don't like the fact that there are people over here who can see what's happening and they're like, no, you did it. No, you did it. No, some other fucking thing did it. Everybody needs to start coping with whatever's going on here because obviously something fucking really weird is happening. I'm just saying. Call me any time of the day or night. Anything you hear about where she's gone. She's out there alone. She'll be okay. It's not a kind world. It's not, Jared agreed. So, he texts Crashpad and tells him about the fact that Sarah has disappeared and asks if he knows where she's been. And Crashpad says he doesn't know where she is, but he knows that she was at that retreat and that she was planning on bailing. And Jared feels very uncomfortable with the fact that, they've been chatting, but she's more comfortable telling Crashpad that she plans on bailing than she was telling him. Sarah had gone radio silent, yada, yada, yada. Jared messaged one of the friends she retweeted endlessly. And he'd written back, fucking pig, don't think I don't know what you're doing. The law is on my side. Oink, oink, motherfucker. What the fuck does that even mean? Does he think that Jared is trying to get her in trouble with the law? What does that... But anyway, Maeve's heels clicked down the hallway. I'm back, she said. How'd your date go? We danced and danced. My feet are killing me, but it was so worth it. He heard Mave humming as she got ready for bed. He was tired, so it irritated him. He wished Sarah'd drop him a line, even to tell him to fuck off, and let him know she was okay. And that is the end of that chapter. So, guys, what the fuck is in his room? Super uncomfortable with all of this. Don't like it. There's just this feeling of dread that I have. I hope it's not something hostile. That's all I'm saying. I just wish that Jared, embraced that there was some shit going on so that he could be better prepared to cope with it is the main thing. But he just doesn't seem interested. All right, well, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much to Robin for commissioning this. This has been a lot of fun to read. This has been even more fun so far than the first one, to be honest. And probably because I have, more information and a lot more has been revealed already. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see what... I want to know what happened to Sarah, also. Her bailing the way that she did feels like it must mean something, but... All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you're enjoying it. And I will be seeing you soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.